Mr. Haley did do some writing here. He did the Alex Haley figurines while he was here and did some writing. Although after the success of Roots, I think that kind of scared Mr. Haley out of writing because Roots overwhelmed him so much that it was really hard for him to finish books that publishing companies were requesting that he finish. He just really had a hard time with it because Roots really took a lot out of Mr. Haley. The emotion that was in the story, the things that he had found out about his family and all was very, very emotional for him. And I think the reason, he said he just really didn't ever want anything like the success of Roots to happen to him again because it was so overwhelming to him. He had no idea that when he embarked upon this venture to research his roots, how it was going to affect actually the entire world. Mr. Haley's first visit came to East Tennessee was in 1982. He came here to visit the World's Fair. While here, this was his first visit to East Tennessee, and he just absolutely fell in love with this area and with its people. And while here, he met and became very good friends with Mr. John Rice Irwin. And Mr. Irwin is a museum owner in our area that specializes in preserving the history of the Appalachian region. Upon Mr. Haley's departure from the World's Fair, he had asked Mr. Irwin if some property came up for sale in this area, if he would please let him know that he would be interested in coming this way, because at that time he lived in California. So it was 6 or 8 months or so after Mr. Haley's departure from the World's Fair, this facility here came up for sale. It was a 125-acre farm, and the Johnson family owned it and had put it up for sale through their heirs. And so Mr. Haley came out, and Mr. Irwin brought him down to look at this farm, and Mr. Haley just absolutely fell in love with it. The only 2 things that were on the property at the time of Mr. Haley's purchase was this 2-story white house and the cantilever barn, which now houses the Children's Defense Fund's like Langston Hughes Library. Mr. Haley just fell in love with it, and so he said about at that time to purchase it. I think it was purchased in June of around 1984. A lot of times we would do entertaining for him out on the facility, across in front of the library. We would set up the big black iron kettles on brick, and we would build fires underneath them. And we would have catfish fries and hush puppies and corn on the cob and baked beans in those kettles cooking over the fire. And so the people from the movie and publishing industry really liked that. And then we would hook the tractors up to the wagons and take everybody for hay rides here on the farm. It was just really an exciting time, a lot of fun. And there was usually be a band playing from the gazebo. And a lot of times we would just decorate the place, to whatever theme for the time of year that it was. And he thoroughly loved this farm. Mr. Haley was 61 years old before he ever owned his first home. And when he purchased this farm, he described it as a treat to himself and really loved for people to come here and visit. Oprah Winfrey has been a guest here, Tom T. Hall, Maya Angelou, Spencer Christian, Lamar Alexander. A lot of well-known people have traveled through the facility here. Mr. Haley he was comical at times. He was just simple and down to earth. Had a very warm heart. He loved to help people. He's put numerous kids through college that couldn't have afforded to have went if it not had been for him. He was talking to one young man one day, and he had told Mr. Haley, he said, "I'd really love to go to school, but he said, I can't afford it because he said, I have to help my mother take care of our family." And Mr. Haley just asked him, said, "Where do you want to go to school?" And the young man replied to him, and Mr. Haley paid that boy's way all the way through college because he told him to go and go to school if that's what you want. And a lot of people, think that Mr. Haley was broke, when he passed away, and in a sense he was, but it wasn't because he squandered it. It's because he used his what he made from Roots. He used to help people. He loved people. He loved being around people. Mr. Haley may leave here one day and tell us, "I want to have 4 for supper tonight." But when he come back home, he may have 30 with him. To give you kind of an example of that, he would, a lot of times Mr. Haley, when he continued to write, he liked to go back out to sea to write because I guess that's just where he felt comfortable. But anyway, we were over at the lodge one day and we were putting up corn. and in the freezer, because we grew a lot of vegetables here on the farm, and we did a lot of canning. And he called us from McGee Tyson Airport, and we weren't expecting him in, for a couple of weeks yet. But he had called and said that he had arrived early, and he wanted to know if he could bring a few guests out, for dinner that evening at the farm. And we told him, sure, and we told him, we'd been putting up corn and stuff. And so we happened to ask him before he got off the phone about how many he thought he was bringing. And he said, I think about 110 would be a good number. What had happened is he had met this plane load of teachers who were en route to a conference, and they were having mechanical problems with the plane. And Mr. Haley got to talking to them, so he actually rented a bus from the Greyhound station and had those teachers bust out here. And of course, we were all frantic out here trying to get together a meal for 110 that we were quite prepared to know that was coming. But we made it, and everything turned out great. But he would do that to us a lot, because if he was out along, just here and there, when he'd meet someone, if he knew we were cooking tonight, he would invite them to dinner. He never met a stranger. And he was just always a caring and compassionate person. And he could never tell anybody no. Whatever they asked of him, he would try to accommodate, if he could. He allowed the University of Tennessee to utilize this facility for many of its functions. And he actually donated his literary works, the research papers for Roots. He donated that to the University of Tennessee. He may come in and be here at the facility for 2 or 3 weeks, and he may be gone then he may leave and be gone for several months if he would go back out to sea to write. But as he got older, it was a little harder for him to get around. He started having some health issues. He kind of started staying here a little more, and would try to do, some of his work here at the farm. But he really kind of just wanted to use this place as a place to come and unwind and to relax and to just enjoy the serenity that he found here. The last time I ever saw Mr. Haley here at his home here in Tennessee was he walked out the back door of the White House and got into the car with his travel companion, Arthur Sims, and they left to go to McGee Tyson Airport. He was en route to speak. He was en route to Seattle to speak at a university there, and he passed away before he ever got to speak of a sudden heart attack in Seattle, Washington, on February the 10th of 1992. Roots was very emotional for Mr. Haley. As I said, it just really took a lot out of him. But he gave what it took from him, he gave back to all the people throughout the world to be able to look back up on their ancestors. He said he realized that after he had written Roots, he didn't just do it for himself, that he had done it for all those who had no one to tell their story.